The breakdown isn't arriving in 2026. You're already waist-deep in it. And if you haven't sensed it yet, it's because they've conditioned you to overlook it. But the indicators are all around. 62% of Americans are currently living paycheck to paycheck. More than 80 million possess zero emergency reserves. And here's this. 1 in 3 U.S. households are foregoing meals simply to maintain electricity. Meanwhile, billionaires are purchasing shelters in New Zealand. China's selling U.S. treasuries, and central banks acquired more gold in the past 18 months than in any period since 1950. Why? Because the people at the summit understand what's approaching, and they understand you're not prepared. Everything you're going to witness isn't conjecture. It's already unfolding, quietly, systematically. And by the moment the headlines acknowledge it, you'll be too late. This is the countdown the government won't caution you about, the media won't examine, and your financial consultants too frightened to clarify. This is why 2026 is going to surprise millions of Americans. The disappearing middle class isn't merely a pattern, it's a countdown timer. You've likely heard this mentioned around a dozen occasions. The middle class is contracting. But what you haven't heard, and what almost nobody is discussing, is that 2026 may be the year the middle class flatlines completely in critical regions of the nation. And no, this isn't simply economic fretting. This is derived from harsh, troubling statistics that should disturb every American who still believes they're secure. According to Pew Research, the U.S. middle class has already contracted from 61% in 1971 to just below 50% today. That's millions of families that didn't ascend into the upper class, they dropped. And now the middle class is supporting itself on credit card debt, existing on borrowed time and borrowed currency. Right now, total household credit card debt in America has surpassed $1.13 trillion, a new milestone, according to the New York Fed. And here's the surprise. Over 25% of Americans are currently using credit simply to purchase groceries. In 2026, as interest rates stay high and food inflation continues pushing higher than official CPI statistics acknowledge, those credit card balances will become economic explosives. One unexpected emergency, your vehicle breaks down, a hospital appointment, your child needs college funds, and suddenly you're descending. The average interest on that debt now over 21%, which means you're getting taxed twice, once by inflation and again by the banks who provided you the rope to destroy yourself. And what makes this even more frightening is that the illusion of prosperity, the cars in the driveway, the financed houses, the Amazon shipments, is concealing the collapse of purchasing capacity. Adjusted for inflation, real wages haven't risen in 50 years. So when people say, I'm middle class, what they're genuinely saying is, I'm one missed paycheck from catastrophe. And by the way, corporations understand this. That's why they're investing in automation and AI systems to eliminate jobs, not preserve them. 2026 isn't merely a tempest. It's the year the roof gets torn off the American fantasy, and the people beneath realize there's no foundation left. You don't receive a second opportunity when a class structure collapses. And make no mistake, that's precisely what we're observing. Foreign investors are quietly purchasing America's future, and you're not welcomed. Here's a question nobody seems to pose. Why are Chinese, Saudi, and European investors acquiring U.S. land, homes, and farmland at record volumes right now? Because they comprehend something you don't. They comprehend that while Americans are drowning in personal debt and existing paycheck to paycheck, the genuine value of the nation, its water, its crops, its soil, its cities, is being sold like a foreclosure sale. In 2023 alone, foreign investors purchased over $53 billion in U.S. real estate, and that number is on course to surpass all records again in 2026. Canada, China, Mexico, Germany, Singapore. These nations aren't simply diversifying, they're planting markers, they're securing assets while Americans are still debating about gas prices. Want some nightmare substance? Over 40% of residential home acquisitions in Miami, Houston, and Las Vegas in 2024 were made in cash by foreign purchasers. While you were applying for a mortgage and worrying over your credit score, someone in Dubai was transferring millions to acquire the house next door. Why? Because they observe what's approaching: a destabilized dollar, rising interest rates, water scarcities in the Midwest, climate-fueled crop disasters, and they want their money out of their own failing systems and into yours.
You see, to them, America isn't a country. It's a safe deposit container. But you reside here. And that means when housing prices surge because a foreign billionaire purchased 6 condos in your zip code, you're the one priced out. You're the one assuming more debt simply to compete. And here's where it gets sinister. In 2026, expect new legislation that quietly provides more tax benefits to foreign development investment, code for let wealthy people acquire the land your children were supposed to inherit. If you think this sounds like some fringe conspiracy, go ask why Bill Gates is now the largest private farmland proprietor in America. Why does tech royalty care about dirt? Because in a collapsing system, whoever owns the food and the water owns the people. And right now, foreign entities are acquiring both, while Americans are busy purchasing DoorDash. Wake up. By the time people notice, they won't even own their neighborhood. The real estate time explosive no one is prepared for. There's a lie the real estate market has been whispering into your ear for years. Home prices always increase. But here's what the banks, the Fed, and the talking heads on CNBC don't want you to understand. 2026 is shaping up to be the year the commercial real estate market finally fractures. And when it does, it's going to ripple out into every home, every suburb, and every 401k in the country. Here's why. Since 2020, over $1.5 trillion in commercial property debt was financed under ultra-low interest rates. But in 2026, more than $500 billion of that debt is set to mature, and it has to be refinanced at rates double or even triple what they were. Do the calculation. A 3% interest loan that's now 7%. That's not a bump, that's a precipice. Office buildings in major cities are already 30% empty thanks to permanent work-from-home transitions. Malls are ghost towns. Strip centers are half vacant. But the banks still hold those properties on their books at full value. They haven't written down the losses yet. Why? Because doing so would mean triggering a banking crisis even worse than 2008. And here's the real surprise. Your pension fund, your mutual fund, your retirement savings, they're all exposed to commercial REITs. That's right. When those assets collapse, so does your future. But wait, it gets worse. Homeowners are walking into a buzzsaw, too. As more commercial real estate defaults, banks will tighten lending across the board. That means even if you've got good credit, good income, and a down payment, your mortgage will be harder to obtain. Housing demand will slump, but prices won't decline. Why? Because institutional investors, think BlackRock, Vanguard, will swoop in with cash and purchase entire neighborhoods for pennies on the dollar, just like they did in Phoenix, just like they did in Atlanta. In 2026, owning a home won't just be difficult, it'll be a rigged competition. And the only people who will win are the ones with liquidity, leverage, and lobbyists. Everyone else, get ready for rent increases, evictions, and a housing market that looks eerily like the 2008 crash. Only this time, there won't be a bailout. Your dollar is being euthanized in broad daylight, and it's no accident. We need to stop pretending the dollar is powerful, because what's actually happening is that the US dollar is being systematically euthanized, not through a crash, not through a default, but through a quiet, intentional, engineered decline. And here's the crazy part. It's being done to purchase time, to inflate away our debt, and to distract the public long enough for the real power players to reposition themselves. Let's discuss numbers. In 2000, $1 could purchase you what now costs $185. That's an 85% erosion of purchasing power in just 2 decades. But what changed in the last 18 months is that global trust in the US dollar is breaking. Why? Because we weaponized it. We sanctioned Russia, we threatened China, we froze bank accounts, and now the BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus a dozen more nations lining up, are launching their own trade currency. This isn't theoretical anymore. The BRICS bloc now makes up over 30% of global GDP, and they've openly stated their goal is to de-dollarize global trade.
In plain English, America's losing its monopoly on money, and that's a death sentence for an empire. Because here's the ugly truth. The only reason America can print infinite dollars is because other countries are forced to use them. The second they stop, and it's happening right now, our inflation becomes permanent. Your savings worthless, your salary eaten alive. And what's the government doing? Quietly pushing CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, as a solution. But it's not a solution, it's a leash. Imagine the IRS, the Federal Reserve, and your bank all being one single op. In 2026, the Fed won't just control the interest rate,
They'll control how, where, and when you spend. That's not speculation. That's already being piloted under Project Cedar in New York and mirrored by the Digital Euro initiative in the EU. And once this rolls out nationally, it's game over for cash, game over for privacy. And the dollar? It'll still be around, but it won't be yours anymore. It'll be theirs. Programmable, trackable, and 100% disposable when you're no longer useful to the system. The AI revolution is replacing you faster than anyone wants to acknowledge. Everybody's talking about AI like it's some shiny new gadget, a way to make resumes, write emails, edit selfies. But what they're not talking about is the gutting of the labor market that's already started and is going to go nuclear in 2026. You think this is an exaggeration? Let's look at what's already happening. In 2024, Goldman Sachs estimated that AI could replace 300 million jobs globally. That's not a theoretical model. That's 300 million paychecks gone. And they weren't talking about truck drivers and factory workers. They were talking about white-collar, knowledge workers, accountants, analysts, customer service representatives, HR, marketing teams, all being swallowed whole by machine learning models that work 24/7, don't get sick, and never demand a raise. Let that sink in. The very people who thought they were safe, the office professionals, are now obsolete in Excel. And you're already seeing the quiet layoffs. Companies call it restructuring. They say it's efficiency, but what it really is you getting automated out of relevance. In 2026, this won't be a trend. It'll be the default operating mode of the American economy. Take Wendy's, for example, already piloting AI drive-through systems that don't just take orders, but upsell with machine-learned persuasion tactics. Bank of America is using AI to replace financial advisors. Amazon has rolled out palm print scanners to replace checkout clerks. And if you think, well, I'll just learn to code, you're already behind. ChatGPT-6 and its successors are writing code better and faster than junior devs. The question is no longer whether AI will replace workers. The question is, what happens to 50 million Americans when they're no longer economically necessary? What happens when productivity surges but wages don't? Spoiler alert, you get riots, you get revolts, and you get a nation where the economic engine is running full speed with nobody left behind the wheel. If you're not learning how to own the systems through investment, IP, or business ownership, you're already the product. In 2026, AI will be the biggest wealth divide we've ever seen, and most Americans will realize it way too late. Food prices are about to explode, and nobody's sounding the alarm. This one hurts because it's the most relatable and the most terrifying. In 2026, America will enter a full-blown food affordability crisis, not a shortage of supply, a shortage of access. And if you've been to a grocery store lately, you've already felt it. Bread that used to be $1.99 is now $4.29. A bag of apples is $8. Milk is flirting with $6 a gallon in major metro areas. But here's what most people don't know. The prices you see today are being subsidized. The USDA is already quietly bailing out regional suppliers and offering emergency food assistance to food banks in record volume. Because behind the scenes, American agriculture is in collapse mode. Over 1/3 of U.S. farmland is now suffering from water shortages, mostly due to the draining of the Ogallala Aquifer, which provides irrigation for over 20% of all U.S. grain production. That's drying up fast, and there's no plan B. Meanwhile, extreme weather from climate shifts is slashing yields. In 2025, we saw grain output drop by 14% nationwide, and forecasts for 2026 predict double-digit losses again. When less food gets harvested, prices go up. And that's just the supply side. Now let's talk logistics. America's aging railroads and trucking systems are buckling under fuel inflation and labor strikes. The Teamsters Union is already warning of a nationwide strike next year, which would freeze 70% of all food transport. And the kicker? Mega corporations like Cargill and Tyson are quietly buying up smaller farms and consolidating food control, making it nearly impossible for local producers to compete. That means when things get tight, you're not buying from a neighbor, you're buying from a monopoly, and they charge whatever they want. By Q3 of 2026, the average U.S. household is projected to spend over 20% of its income on food, the highest percentage since World War II. And for lower-income families, it'll be closer to 40%. That's not just inflation, that's economic starvation. You won't see bread lines in 2026. You'll see DoorDash orders drop to zero because people literally can't afford food delivery anymore. And when Americans can't eat, you better believe things start to unravel.
Historically, food inflation is the first domino to fall before societal collapse. And in 2026, it's already tipping. The banking system is preparing to lock you out, literally. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to notice something very wrong is happening in banking. In fact, if you've tried to withdraw more than $5,000 in cash recently, chances are you were met with questions, delays, maybe even a flat-out denial. That's not bad customer service, that's financial control. Because right now, in late 2025, heading into 2026, the entire U.S. banking system is quietly shifting from access to restriction. Banks aren't just holding your money, they're building walls around it. And here's the part nobody's saying out loud. It's not because your bank is under stress, it's because your government told them to. Since the Bank Term Funding Program launched in 2023 as an emergency liquidity backstop, over $160 billion has quietly flown into banks that were on the verge of collapse. Banks that never made headlines. And now, those same banks are sitting on hundreds of billions in unrealized losses, mostly tied to outdated bond portfolios they can't sell without taking massive hits. That means if just 3 to 5% of Americans decided to pull their money out tomorrow, the system would crack. So instead, they're trying to get ahead of the run. That's why banks are now rolling out biometric ATMs, closing rural branches, and pushing digital-only accounts. This isn't modernization, it's containment. By early 2026, expect mandatory biometric verification for any transaction over $1,000. That's already being piloted by JP Morgan and Wells Fargo. And don't even think about buying precious metals in bulk. Several U.S. banks have already flagged gold and silver purchases as suspicious activity under new AML protocols. In other words, if you try to pull your own money out of your account to buy something they don't like, you get red flagged. Think I'm exaggerating? Go read FinCEN's new guidance on domestic extremism-linked transactions. It's already being used as the basis to track purchases of non-compliant assets. Let me put this plainly. In 2026, your money is not your money. It's a permission slip. And the second you act outside the system's expectations, that permission gets revoked. We're not talking about some future dystopia. We're talking about next year, when the FDIC admits it only holds 1.25% of insured deposits in actual reserves. You're trusting an institution that literally doesn't have your money. And when that trust breaks, the lockdown begins. Quiet, invisible, and irreversible. You won't get a letter. You'll get a declined transaction and no explanation. America's cities are quietly collapsing into two-tier war zones. You might not see it from your front porch, but across America, the cities are splitting in half. Not just rich versus poor, not just downtown versus suburbs. Two completely different realities now exist in every major metro. And by 2026, this fragmentation is going to explode into a permanent, unavoidable, and dangerous divide. Think this is fear-mongering? Here's what's already happening in San Francisco, Portland, Chicago, and Philadelphia. Entire neighborhoods are now unofficial no-go zones. Police forces are chronically understaffed, businesses are boarding up, and homelessness has surged past record-breaking levels.
In Los Angeles, over 75,000 people sleep on the streets. But just 2 zip codes over, new luxury towers are going up with $5,000 a month studios, armed security, and fingerprint elevators. That's not inequality. That's a soft civil war. Violent crime is up 39% in Tier 2 metros since 2022, even as property crimes fall. Why? Because the people breaking into Walgreens aren't stealing TVs, they're stealing food. But wealthier zones, they're not experiencing crime. Why? Because they've become privately patrolled microstates with HOA police, geofence surveillance, and resident-only access roads. And cities are fine with it. In 2026, this model will become the new norm. Enclave cities inside decaying cities. Think Hunger Games, but it's Houston, Detroit, St. Louis. And if you don't believe this, go look at zoning laws being passed in Phoenix right now that allow for autonomous private security systems on residential blocks. In other words, drones, cameras, license plate tracking, paid for by rich homeowners, ignored by city governments. What you're watching is the final unraveling of shared civic life. There's no us anymore, just the people who can wall off the chaos and the ones who can't. When the next financial shock hits, these inner cities are going to collapse first because the infrastructure is already rotting, the services are gutted, and the tax base is gone.
The wealth is left, the jobs have left, and the only thing left is desperation, which means crime goes up, property values plummet, insurance companies refuse to write policies like they're already doing in parts of California. And if your house loses insurance, good luck selling. That's the real trap. You can't leave, and no one wants in. 2026 will be the year millions of Americans realize that the city they live in is no longer a functioning part of the United States, but a quarantine zone of economic ruin. And there will be no plan to fix it, because the elite already left. And the working class? They're the ones who will be left holding the keys to a city no one wants to unlock. The U.S. government is quietly preparing for mass civil unrest, and you're not supposed to know why. If you think everything feels off right now, you're not imagining it. And you're definitely not alone. But what most people don't realize is that the U.S. government knows exactly what's coming, and they've already started preparing for it. Not with solutions, not with economic relief, with riot shields, crowd suppression tech, surveillance, AI. Let's start with the receipts. The Department of Homeland Security requested over $1.6 billion in 2025 for civil disturbance readiness, a nearly 200% increase over pre-2020 levels. Why? Because the intelligence reports are clear. 2026 will be the flashpoint. A perfect storm of inflation, housing chaos, food instability, and automation, job loss, all converging at once. They know it. You feel it, but no one in power is willing to stop it. Instead, they're building containment systems. Have you seen the rollout of smart streetlights in New York, LA, and Dallas? They're marketed as energy efficient and eco-friendly, but what you're not told is that they come equipped with high-resolution audio sensors and facial recognition cameras designed specifically to detect crowd formation and escalating volume events. That's not paranoia. That's patent-verified technology already being used. And when you ask why, the answer is simple. Because they know what's about to happen when the masses realize they've been priced out of survival. It's why the National Guard is now being permanently stationed near major urban zones under joint emergency readiness initiatives. It's why tech companies like Amazon and Google have opened contracts with the Pentagon to provide real-time geospatial intelligence on American citizens. They're not fighting a war overseas anymore. They're building a predictive policing matrix right here. And let's talk about Project Maven, the Department of Defense's AI surveillance platform that's already using machine learning to track social volatility indicators. Translation: they know which neighborhoods will snap first, which cities will burn, and who's likely to be organizing. Think about that. In 2026, the government won't be reacting to unrest, they'll be preempting it. Not with help, but with suppression. And here's the kicker. None of this is public knowledge.
You're not supposed to ask why billions are going to tear gas and armored drones instead of food and rent relief. You're supposed to keep your head down, pay your taxes, scroll your feed. But when the dam breaks, and it will, don't expect a rescue. Expect a containment zone. Expect lockdowns. Expect controlled media. And if you say the wrong thing, expect to disappear from the algorithm. The collapse isn't coming because you're already living in it. There is no future collapse because it's not about to happen. It already is. Right now, you are living through it. It's not one event. It's not a crash. It's a slow, calculated, multi-layered dismantling of the American way of life. And the reason most people can't see it? Because we were trained to expect collapse to look like a movie. Sirens, screaming, sudden chaos. But that's not how systems really fail. They fail like this, gradually, silently, and with permission. Think about it. When your grocery bill doubles and your paycheck doesn't, that's collapse. When your rent eats half your income and you can't leave, that's collapse. When you're forced to finance every basic need with credit and interest eats your future, that's collapse. When schools fall apart, bridges crumble, tap water turns toxic, and nobody does anything, that's collapse. When corporations can fire you via email but keep your data forever, that's collapse. When a small group of elites add $7 trillion in wealth during a pandemic while 60% of Americans can't cover a $500 emergency, that's not capitalism, that's feudalism with Wi-Fi. And you've been conditioned to normalize every piece of it. That's the sick genius of it all. You're not afraid of collapse because it already happened so slowly. You adapted to it. But 2026, that's the year the illusion finally cracks. The year you realize the ladder you were climbing was never leaning on anything.
That the savings you thought were safety were being eaten by inflation in real time. That the dream they sold you in high school, work hard, go to college, get a home, was just a script to keep you busy while they took everything. There's no cavalry coming, no hero politician, no magic innovation. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended, just not for you. Because the collapse was never about buildings falling. It was about trust dissolving. And in 2026, that trust is gone, replaced by fear, by anger, and by a quiet, rising realization that you are completely on your own. The only question left now isn't if things will break. It's whether you'll be ready when the rest of the world finally notices it's already broken. You've seen the signs. You've felt them in your bank account, in your fridge, in your bones. This isn't some future doomsday scenario. It's now, right now. The systems you were told would protect you, the banks, the government, the job market, they've already chosen who survives this and who gets left behind. And if you're not holding the right assets, the right skills, the right knowledge, you're the one being left behind. They won't send out a warning. They won't broadcast it on CNN, because by the time the news catches up, it'll already be too late for you to do anything about it. You have two choices. Pretend this isn't happening and get crushed like everyone else, or wake up, take control, and prepare like your life depends on it. Because if 2024 and 2025 were the warning shots, 2026 is the full-blown reckoning. Get ready or get erased. No one's coming to save you.